This is 3000 NFL Mock Draft, the weekly NFL Mock Draft podcast where we talk about the NFL, college football, anything surrounding the NFL draft, as well as, the mock drafts that go into predicting which players are going to land where. I am Kenneth Arthur of fieldgoals.com. With me, as always, Rob Staten of SeahawksDraftBlog.com. We're coming off of the Seahawks 39-32 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. We'll get into that a little bit and talk about the Seahawks offense. I know it's a hot button issue right now, the offensive line. Around the league, certain other coaches are getting their heads called for, such as Rob Ryan and whatnot. And we'll talk about whether or not Tom Cable deserves this blame. But first, let's get into some other stuff around the NFL and specifically some QB controversies. We're going to do a segment that I'll call the QB sit start game, and we're going to go around to some of these teams that have starting QBs that maybe should or should not be starting, and get into the guys behind them, get Rob's opinion on what he thought of them perhaps going into the draft, or what he sees in the differences between the two quarterbacks. We'll start at the top left in the AFC East with the New York Jets. They've got Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's the starter. Geno Smith is the backup. Fitzpatrick won that job vis-a-vis punch to the face. So that's how Ryan Fitzpatrick landed the Jets starting QB job and hasn't let go. Surprisingly, the Jets are 5-4 and just right there on the cusp of the AFC playoffs in that wild card spot. So it's going to be important for them to have the right quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick phenomenally has been an NFL starter for 8 straight seasons with a variety of teams. He has never gone to the playoffs. He is not a good quarterback. He's good enough, but there's no chance in hell that the Jets are going to win the Super Bowl with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe they don't have a chance in hell with anybody. Backup Geno Smith, at least maybe perhaps he does have that air of mystery. If you look around and say, hey, look at Tyrod Taylor. He's doing pretty good. The Bills are ahead of the Jets. Nobody knew a lot about him. So, Rob, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Geno Smith, Smith being a second-round pick a few years ago. There was talent there, though he came in with red flags. Who gives the Jets the best upside over the final 7 games?
It's for me, it's a pretty easy one. It's got to be Ryan Fitzpatrick. I say that having interviewed Geno Smith just a few weeks ago when he was in London, and you could tell that Geno, having been punched in the face a few weeks before, was on his best behaviour and was quite happy to talk to anybody and was saying all the right things. But the thing about Ryan Fitzpatrick is that he's fairly steady. He does have the occasional really strange decision in him that usually forces to a turnover, but he's pretty steady. He can move the ball around. He's got some decent rapport with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. I think that he's done well so far to get them where they are. And Geno Smith, when he came out at West Virginia, he was clearly, there was something there. There was some talent, albeit in a scheme that is always going to help the quarterbacks. And my impression of him was, look, while you acknowledge the talents there, I'm going to let somebody else draft that guy. And it was pretty obvious that he was going to go in the first 2 rounds of the draft. But he's a classic case of a guy that you say, let somebody else deal with him. Let somebody else see if he's going to work out for them. I don't really see it ever working for Geno Smith. I think the Jets are better off going with Fitzpatrick and seeing what the future holds at that position.
What does the future hold for Bryce Petty? Because the Jets drafted him in the 4th round of this draft out of Baylor. Another, system. We've talked a lot about Baylor this year and how they're able to boost QB numbers, and we talked about Bryce Petty before the draft. It doesn't look like he's hanging around. I'm just kind of curious, what do you see that? Because the main problem, of course, with the Jets isn't that they have Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's that, or that they're choosing the wrong QB. It's that they have no QB whatsoever. That's something that they're going to have to figure out in the offseason, just like many other teams. It's the most difficult mystery to solve in the NFL and also the most important one. So what do they have with Bryce Petty, and where do you see them going forward next year in terms of finding the right QB for Todd Bowles?
Well, Bryce Petty was considered by a lot of people to be potentially the second round pick because he had talent. He sort of had a skill set that you could work with. The problem with him is that Baylor doesn't have an offensive playbook, so he really is kind of learning the pro game from scratch. And it was interesting that a few weeks ago, I think they played the Raiders, and Fitzpatrick got injured, and then Geno Smith got hurt, and there was kind of reports immediately after the game, or maybe even during the game, that the Jets were making phone calls to try and get another quarterback in, because if they were to be without Smith and Fitzpatrick, they weren't going to trust Bryce Petty to even take over for one game. They were actually looking for an outsider to come in, learn the playbook in a week, and then possibly play a game, as opposed to just letting Bryce Petty do it, who's been there all the time. So it goes to show that they perhaps see him as more of a long-term project, someone they can work with over time. And I think that's going to be the case for pretty much anybody that comes out of that Baylor scheme. Robert Griffin III had such exceptional athletic skills and was such a playmaker for Baylor that obviously he's a different case. You're not going to get many guys with his skills and his athleticism. So anybody like Bryce Petty is going to need time. Hello, Kenny. Can you hear me?
Hello, Kenny, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. We may have to do some editing. I might have been talking into a muted mic as well.
Oh, is that what you were doing?
Because I saw you drop out, and then I said, oh, he's dropped out. Well, I'll keep talking. And then I kept talking for a long time, and it appears as though I was muted the whole time.
You want to try starting again, seeing as we're so early on, and just doing it that way? Or
Sure, we haven't done much.
I mean, we could just start again, couldn't we?
Yeah, sure. I'll just fire this up one more time.
Okay.
Thanks.